I would love to do maybe a third one or a TV show continuing the story.
Roland, again, thank you so much. It's the 25th anniversary of Independence Day. It has such a passionate following over all these years, and I wondered, you've done so many movies, so many like big budget spectacle movies, and where does Independence Day rank in your own personal mind of the personal connection you have to it as compared to maybe some of the other films you've done?
Well, it was a very special time because I had just done my first own Hollywood movie, which was called Stargate, which was some sort of a sleeper hit, to a surprise of everybody. And that's the first time I then said, like, okay, so that's worked once, now let's do another original, what I always had in my head, and I was actually at Warner Brothers, and they kind of, wanted me to direct a Harrison Ford movie, about some prison escape. And they said, like, oh, at one point, I always asked the budget, and I said, what's the budget of this? And they said, like, $70 million. And I afterwards, like, venting to the lady I just had hired as a development person. I said, like, for 70 million, I can make my alien invasion movie. And and that's what I did. I mean, it was just super simple. I had like already great ideas, and then I had to only convince Dean of it because he said, I don't know, alien invasion movie. And I said, come to the window. Everything what you see is will be the underbelly of a ship. Get it? I said, oh, wow. But anyhow, so and then we did it, but we also like learned, that Warner Brothers. I had a good friend, Lorenzo de Bonaventura, who became later, like a producer of, the Transformer movies. And I called him up and said, I heard that my favorite director, Tim Burton, is also doing something like this. And he said, yes, yes, yes. And I said, when is that coming out? And he said, oh, that's like slated for August. And then I said to Dean, we have to kind of do this earlier.
Yeah.
And he said, like, is that possible? And I said, yeah, everything is possible. And that's why the movie is called Independence Day. This we had to find some sort of a way to tie it to a date which was before.
Right, and it wasn't even, the studio wasn't allowing you to use the title Independence Day at first, correct? And you were able to kinda sneak it into the
Well, that's like another story. It's like we like kind of did the first time an auction, an auction. We auctioned the film, and there were certain conditions, um, and we wanted to have the title pre-approved, the script pre-approved, and the budget pre-approved. So they had to come to us and said, "Oh, we tested the title, and the title Independence Day didn't test it as well as two other titles we tested." And I said, "What are the other two titles?" And one was Invasion Earth, and the other one was like kind of Doomsday. And I said, "Did you buy them from Roger Corman?" And I said, "Only over my dead body." That's great when you like have some sort of power in a way,
Yeah.
I I was so convinced that Independence Day is the great title for a movie.
Well, and, the cast, everybody is perfect in this movie. It's hard to imagine anybody else taking on these roles, and it not that they weren't already established performers, but it, took their careers to new levels. And I wondered, have there been, maybe some other actors who over the years who have, managed to find their own success that you remember thinking back like, oh, that's somebody that we kind of considered for Independence Day, but for whatever reason it didn't work out? Or Was everybody pretty?
Dean and I, when we like write, we have already actors in mind. So we wrote this for Jeff Goldblum. We were big, huge fans of Jeff. And then I discovered, like kind of because I saw this film, 6 Degrees Separation. And I said, Dean, let's look at this because there's a kid in there which is awesome. And that was Will Smith. And and that was pretty much our two main guys, which was a little bit, there was also the president. There were a lot of other characters, but these two were the most important for us because they had to also like later then work really well together in the spaceship and actually like Fox didn't agree at all.
No, they didn't like your picks.
The only thing what they had like probably still a hand and was casting and it took us like a long time to get them on the movie.
Well,
And to put it politely.
to put it politely, um, of all of the various elements of the film, there's so many memorable and kind of iconic things. But Bill Pullman's speech, of course, is its no speech has happened in the past 25 years that doesn't earn a comparison to like how good that speech was. And I wondered, was that like electricity there on set that like was it as powerful in the moment as audiences would come to witness?
Well, the first thing was when we wrote it, we always had like a card, President holds speech, right? Rallying the troops. And we were like kind of, this was at the end of the movie, and we were like just to turns after 2.5, 3 weeks. We started in Mexico, but we were not quite finished with the script. So we had to write 2 more days in thing. And there was like a thing we hadn't written yet. It was like only till, President holds a speech. And then I said to Dean, why don't just do something like like Crispin's Day speech or something like that. And he said, let me try something. And he came out like 3 or 4 or 5 minutes later and said, what do you think about what? And I said, oh, that's fantastic. It's like, we can always change it later. Never one word was changed in that speech. One, and I think Bill Pullman was born to play that part because he always said, I want to play this like a don't laugh now, but like, I want to play this like John Wayne. I said, okay, give it your best. I have no idea why he said that, but he played John Wayne and in his mind. And he was perfect for this part because at the beginning, we wrote him as a little bit a weaker president who cannot make up his minds and all these kind of things. And then when the aliens come, he's like kind of he rises to the occasion, and that culminates naturally in the speech. And then after the speech, he gets into a plane himself.
Yeah, the John Wayne definitely comes out there for sure.
When we screened the movie in the Clinton White House, afterwards, like Hillary said to me, you know what, Roland, do you think like kind of Bill should do like a drive, a flight, like flying lessons? I said, no, he's already in the White House and it's still pretty good.
Yeah, a little late to be signing up for active duty for Mr. Clinton. Um, when you look back at the movie, kind of a two-part thing. What do you think ultimately ended up being the toughest scene to pull off, and what is the scene that you kind of are the most proud of having pulled off?
Hmm. I always love the moment when Will is alone with the alien. We actually had no lines there because we said we have Will Smith. He will make something up. And we were like behind the camera. It was so hard not to laugh because he was kicking this thing. He was doing all kinds of things. And then when he like yells, and what is that smell? Uh, you hear like actually in the dailies, everybody started laughing. the natural. We did it a couple of times, and he's always like kind of pretty right on when he does it again. And that was like kind of for me probably one of my favorite scenes. And then maybe also we had like just a line in the script, where like David Levinston and Miller or Hiller like kind of sit in the thing and they start and fly off. That was like super simple. And I realized at that point that's like kind of not gonna fly, right? So we like kind of, and I on the day I kind of drew a little, like in cars they have these little H's or whatever that says like forward, backwards, and I said like I put it there, and then like I think Jeff or maybe Will or somebody had the idea why we don't do it the other way around, and then was like really a fun thing that made this all like so much more, menschy. It's too much more like charactery, and that was always like kind of us, always for me, like kind of the idea about this movie to make it as a character movie as much as possible.
Well, yeah, and it's definitely, and I think that's what gives the movie so much charm is that these two guys who are about to fly to the alien mothership can't get off the ground because the little sign's backward.
Like a laptop from Apple.
Right. That has the 2001 Hello Dave thing that comes on at the start. And now that it's 25 years on, of course, like, I could see behind you that it has like the box office totals of Independence Day. So you could never have predicted how big of a success initially this movie was. But that year was Independence Day, Mission Impossible, Twister. There were tons of great, like action, adventure, comedic kind of experiences. When did you kind of realize that like Independence Day is in a world of its own when it comes to the legacy and when it comes to fans, that it's a movie people watch at least once a year every July? Like, was there a specific moment or like an encounter that you had that you realized that?
All came as a total surprise for me. I mean, I kind of there was like a gentleman at Fox, Tom Sherrick. He always said this will be a phenomenon. And I always said, okay, whatever. And I always go away when a movie of mine opens. And I was already in Puerto Vallarta in this empty big house because nobody else came with me that early. And then the telephone calls came in, and I couldn't believe. And then, like, kind of at the end, Rupert Murdoch calls me, man, and I said, "Hey, mate," and congratulations, and well, great, Anyhow, so it was like a little bit of out of body experience, and then don't forget, I mean, the movie was doing really well in America, but it did even better in international. And I always like said that, this is a movie for the whole world. And it was the first movie who crossed over $500 million ever.
It and it replicates the theme of the movie that, like, sure, Independence Day is an American holiday, but it
White holiday.
yeah, and it has this international appeal. And this is the 25th anniversary of Independence Day, and then Resurgence came out 5 years ago. And so looking to the future, like, I know a lot of it is tied up in what Disney wants to do, what they might think they could do. Like, could you see maybe not necessarily like a part three, like an Independence Day 3, but can you see the world expanding to a TV show, a spin-off, a prequel? Like, is the world possibly going to expand in your mind, regardless of the Disney part of it?
Well, it's like, yes. I mean, they have now like a streaming service and they need products. I mean, I would love to do maybe a third one or a TV show. continuing the story because we actually, when we like that, Independence the Resurgence, we already had also the third part already. And actually, the third part has much more to do with the first part because we like kind of learn more or less, that out there are like kind of a lot of refugees and they're like living on a refugee planet. And when they finally come there, because somewhat like kind of, one of these aliens on Earth like kind of found out about it and telepathically or whatever gave it to their super queen. They're all humans, but in all different forms. So it's like kind of it's this kind of thing that like we have like Brent Spiner and Jeff Goldblum yeah, and we have like kind of them with all these different forms of people, which would be a great movie. But we'll see what happens.
Yeah, and especially, between the first movie and the second movie, you have so many years that, that there could be an idea that comes out to but,
Yeah,
like
also like I mean, it's like I look I have enough to do, so I don't have to.
well, and that's what I was wondering is, like, you recently did Midway, you've got Moonfall coming up, like, do you feel, passionate about Independence Day that you wouldn't let it go, or could you see someone else, exploring something?
It doesn't matter whoever does it, but I feel very passionate about it. Very, very passionate because it was a little bit like, I mean, this movie single-handedly also got me total freedom. I have Final Cut since then. I'm like kind of pretty much do my own thing. I'm not even producing my own films, no studio anymore. They're like all self a studio, you know what I mean? Very small place, like a little garage studio. Anyhow, so but I'm feel very, very passionate about it because it was my first actually, that's why both Stargate and Independence they're seminal movies for me. They pretty much created all what I did afterwards.
Well, and before I let you go here, just looking towards the future, and you're currently working on Moonfall. Is there anything that you can tell like Roland Emmerich fans? This is what's going to be different from what you're expecting with Moonfall, and this is what you're definitely going to get as far as like the tone or the adventure.
It has a very, very similar tone than Independence Day, and it's at first like you think it's a disaster movie, and then you realize, oh my god, this is something much bigger than that. And we always like say the moon is falling on Earth, which is a bad thing, but on top of it, it's not what we think it is, which makes it like kind of some sort of thing, and it has like an alien aspect to it.
Very cool. And once again, you brought together this incredible cast. So I can't see what it is. Wait to see it. And I love the way that you're able to weave in things like climate change or environmentalism into all of your films. Obviously sometimes in more subtle ways and other times more overt. So it's always really exciting when I hear you're working on something because I know if I expect this from you, it's gonna be this. It's gonna be something even bigger than what I anticipate. So
In Moonfall, it's like even like a lot of people read the script. When they finally saw the script, they couldn't believe it. It was like, oh my God, I never saw it that it's that big. And it's like,
thanks. I've been doing this for 30 years. You really think I'm well, Roland, I can't thank you enough. I really appreciate you taking the time to chat. Independence Day is means a lot to me, and 25 years. I look forward to talking about this in another 25 years about how the legacy still holds up. So huge congrats to you.
well, thanks.
Bye bye.